The Yugioh Misconception series, where we take a close look at misconceptions that even competitive players and judges have on card decks, game mechanics, rulings, and policies.
What's up YouTube, I'm Vaughn, and today we are looking at the misconception of sharking. Because a lot of players have the misinterpretation of what sharking really is, and it is used more as a way to characterize a player in an insulting way, which I don't understand how calling a player a fish is considered an insult, and especially when those players get offended when you use proper vulgarity like go fuck yourself. So in today's video, we're going to take a close look of what sharking really is. And the way to do so is by reading the Konami policy or wait for a random guy to make a video about it. So what is sharking? Well, sharking is when a player tries to enforce a ruling or a policy to get a game advantage instead of trying to win fairly as the game is attended. Now, the reason why this policy was even made is because there's been a lot of situations when a player allowed his opponent to cheat or do an illegal activation just in hopes of later on calling a judge so the judge can issue them a game loss or a match loss. Now, sharking is not really considered as, if the penalty is only a warning, that's not really sharking. It usually has to be either a game loss or a match loss that your opponent will receive. Because if you're trying to issue a warning to your opponent, that doesn't make you a shark. That makes you an idiot. So today we're going to do a breakdown of what sharking really is. And we have a few scenarios to determine which one is sharking and which one is actually just following the game mechanic, which is very important and is a big difference than enforcing a ruling. So a game mechanic is just how the game is intended to be played. So example, if your opponent wants to try to normal summon twice on his turn, that doesn't make you a shark if you decide not to allow him. That's just following the game mechanic. Or if your opponent summons a monster and asks you for confirmation of if the summon is successful, and you look at your field and your hand and you say it is, and they want to change back and summon another monster, that doesn't make you a shark. Yu-Gi-Oh is like chess. Pretty much, if you play the card and you let go of the card, it is too late. You can't take back your plays. That is the game mechanic of Yu-Gi-Oh. Now, if you disagree with that, well, I suggest you play another competitive game. One that has simpler rules like Operation. Just don't fucking touch the sides. That's it. So the scenarios that we have over here, it doesn't necessarily all have to do with the actual cards itself. It could be stuff that is related to the game state, like sleeves. If we look at sleeves, for example, your opponent has a marked sleeve. Before the game started, you asked your opponent if they could change the sleeve. They said no. You call a judge. The judge comes, forces them to change the sleeve, and issues a warning. That is not sharking. That is just following the policy. That's it. You're not forcing a policy or anything like that. And also, you were nice enough to even tell them to change the sleeve. But let's take the exact same scenario and change it up of what would be considered sharking. You notice your opponent has a marked sleeve. You decide not to say anything about it. You commence the game. Then later on, you decide because you're on a disadvantage to call a judge and tell them that my opponent has a marked sleeve. Now, that is sharking. And the judge, if he's doing his job, he will even ask you the right question of, when do you notice the marked sleeve? Because it makes a big difference. If you notice it right away and you call a judge, you're doing it right. If you decide to uphold it just to use it when you're at a disadvantage, that is sharking. Now this could also be applied to either stalling or with remote duels, the lagging. As soon as your opponent is stalling or lagging, you should be calling a judge. And that's not sharking. What would be sharking is if you don't say anything about it, you wait when you're at a disadvantage, and then in your favor, you call your judge and you ask them and tell them that your player has been lagging or stalling just in hope that they will be issued a game loss. That is sharking. Now, if we look at effects, optional effects that are supposed to trigger that your opponent forget about it. Now, this is in the category of the game mechanic and not rulings. So, best card, for example, is Skarm of the Burning Abyss. A lot of players forget to use the effect at the end phase. So if your opponent passes the turn and you draw on your draw phase, but wants to use the effect to search, and you say no, that is not sharking. Okay, that is actually following the game mechanic. It's one, it is too late, and two, there has been new knowledge that was presented to the player. He saw the top card of his deck. He saw the next card. You cannot add a card because think about this. What happened if the card that he drew benefits if your opponent adds a monster. There you go. You cannot make decisions like that, especially if it goes against the actual game mechanic. Okay? So these are the difference between of what is actually sharking and what is actually the game mechanic. And a lot of players just assume all of this is sharking in one category, which is not. But it has to make you think of one thing. Why are all these players labeling other players as sharks, but the judges are not issuing any penalties or any disqualification or even banning of any of these players that's getting accused for sharking, because the judges know these are not sharking. These are not real sharking at all. These are the players that are actually following the game. And when I see like videos of players saying like, oh, the community is toxic because of shark, it's like, which one's worse? The guy that says no for you cheating, or the player that is asking if it's okay if he cheats? And that is the misconception of sharking. Now, if you guys enjoyed today's video, you know what to do. Like and subscribe. And if you didn't, you know, well, you let me know. You're definitely going to put it in the comments, but it's all fine. And that's the Misconception series.